Well, hello, my friend. Welcome back to another episode of the From Chaos to Peace podcast, where I talk about how clutter is so much more than you think, and we put a spiritual twist on clearing that clutter to get organized. Thank you so much for allowing me back into your ears. Well, hello, my friend. I'm your host, Conny Graf. Welcome to the podcast, and thank you for being here. It's quite hot here in the Vancouver area and also in my office, but my goal is to really record a great episode for you despite the heat. Because today I want to chat with you about something a lot of us wrestle with, our mile-long to-do list. The monster list. You know, the one where everything is thrown together into one big overwhelming pile? Everything that pops into our mind, everything we need to do, everything we want to do, everything we think we should do, and should with air quotes, because remember episode 269? Also everything we kind of maybe want to do one day, everything that would be nice to do one day. You know the list, right? Now, if you actually have only one list with all of that, what I just mentioned on it, then congratulations, my friend. You're already one step ahead of me and ahead of many people I know. Because if you are like me and many of my past and current clients, then we don't just have this one list. What we actually do have is things written down on post-it notes, snippets of papers, in starter journals, on the cell phone somewhere, in a task app, probably in our email inbox, maybe in Evernote, maybe in Notion, whatever you're using, right? In Asana. And so it's really hard to have an overview like this and to not forget everything. And to find the notes we need to do a certain task because maybe we've written down something specific that we need to remember when doing that task. So ask me how I know. So for us who actually don't have this one huge master list or monster list or mile-long to-do list, we actually, as a first step, have to do one of those. We have to bring everything together in one place. And that could be in a journal, in a planner, or what I love to do is to put that all into a digital note. Especially because when we want to sort it after, it's easier to sort it in a digital note. But if paper is your jam, you totally go with paper. Like I said, I use a hybrid. I use both paper and digital. But for the master to-do list, I kind of always aim for a digital note. Now, if you want to use Word for that, you could even use Word for that, Google Doc. You can use a real task app, or you can use Evernote, whatever. Just we need to create this catch-all list first. That's not to say that this is what we're using then as our daily to-do list, but we need to bring everything together. We need to bring everything into one place. Because it's super important to have a space where we can unload all those swirling thoughts and ideas and that we have written down somewhere. And then we can work from there, right? And like what I always aim to is, and then I fall off the wagon, I admit it, but what I aim to do is I always want to put it in my master list, in my digital master list. And if I scribble it down during the day on a piece of paper, the idea is actually in the evening that I put it on my master to-do list. So first step is to actually bring it all together onto one of these very overwhelming, classic, endless to-do lists, right? So that is actually not such a bad step. So we want to do that first. And we can go from there. I think there is really no way around it. Like, you will hear afterwards, I talk a little bit about how different personality types deal differently with planning, to-dos and productivity. But I think for all of us, it is important that we have all this stuff in one place. We have to find a way that works for us. Like I said, for me, my ideal is to have it in a digital note. So I have it usually in Evernote. So if that works for you, you try one of the digital apps that work for you, or like I said, a Google Doc. Others really want to have it on paper, then go and use a journal, maybe a journal that has only that in it, right? When you can cross out things when they're done, but you can add things to it. I wouldn't just use loose papers because they can get lost. It's easier if you have some kind of a journal, but it could also be just one of these flimsy journals that you used to do for homework in school or whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be pretty. I would actually make sure that it is not pretty, because if it's too pretty, you don't want to scribble in it, because that could mean you ruin it, and then you're reluctant, and then you write it down again somewhere else and think you will write it nicely into the journal later, and that just adds another step. It will add more chaos, and ask me how I know. So either way, find your way how you want to put that all together. And then in next week's episode, I actually talk about how I declutter and structure this mile-long catch-all list. Whether that's on paper or digital doesn't make a difference. And how I make it work for me, and how you can make it work for you. But this week and in this episode, I want to first look at how your elemental wiring might be shaping your approach to planning and productivity in general. And this is why I'm saying, like, we all need to kind of have everything together first in one place, but then afterwards it might vary, right? Like, different people have different processes and work in a different way. So when I say elemental wiring, then I'm talking about the 4 elements: fire, earth, air, and water, that you have me that I have talked about in many episodes before already, right? And if you have taken my quiz, for example, then you already know your dominant element. But if not, don't worry. Just stick with me and listen to the examples that I'm going to share, and then you might get a feel of what your dominant element might be. And then you can always take the quiz later to see what the result is of the quiz. The link will be in the show notes. So here is how each element or each personality type tends to approach to-do lists and productivity, and where they might get tripped up with and sabotage themselves. So if you're a fire type, or if your dominant element is fire, then you're full of energy and ideas, and you often put way too much on your plate. You jump in and out of plans. You start strong and dive in head first, but then the minute you lose momentum, or it gets a little bit tedious, you lose steam, and then you might start on the next thing, something that sounds more exciting. So in short, you are actually a really good starter, but you often leave chaos behind, a lot of unfinished to-dos behind, projects abandoned in the middle of it. And because you're tending to jump in before thinking, you might only write short but bold to-do lists with items like launch a new course, or reorganize the office, declutter the shelf, or whatever, while you feel super motivated, right? And then you jump in really fast with big energy and ambition at first, but then the challenges hit. You might lose steam, or it may get a little bit difficult, or you may have to start thinking a little bit more, and so you're losing momentum. And so then maybe sometimes your interest quickly wanes too, and when the task requires really some effort, or some detail or some patience. And that's when you might abandon what you're doing and hop to the next thing that you actually have now an idea how you want to start it, because you're a really good starter, right? So then you might abandon this and think you finish this later and you jump to the next thing. So that is really a challenge for you. And so what happens is then you have started but unfinished tasks and projects piling up left and right. And also not just physical projects, like projects in your home or in your office, but also like mental projects, mentally started projects that you abandon in the middle of it. Or like me, I started that quiz, that elemental quiz that I'm talking here on the podcast. I'm all open about it. I started that 6 months ago. I created the quiz and I promoted it a little bit here on the podcast. I promoted it a little bit, but never really full blast because I was already on to the next thing in a way. And now I came back to it and I actually am in the middle of streamlining it. Not that it's not good what I did 6 months ago, but I'm thinking I have some ideas how I want to tweak it. And now I have to be really, really mindful that I'm not in the middle of it, jumping off again and are not finishing it. So this is the fire type, right? Maybe you recognize yourself in that. Maybe not, because not everybody is a fire type. So let's look at the earth type. So as an earth type, you really like structure and lists, and you're probably one of them who have already that catch-all list that I talk about. You have probably everything in one place already. It might be a mile-long to-do list, or maybe it's 3 or 4 pages long, and it might be also way too detailed. And you often might spend too much time on it, organizing it and planning it, and you may get caught up in this whole, maybe even making it pretty or making it more actionable or making it better. And you're often like perfectionistic and think you need to rewrite it maybe even but you're actually not doing what the list says to do, or you spend at least way too much time on this list instead of using that time to execute, right? So you're quite the opposite of the fire type. The fire type jumps in head first, often without a plan, and you might get stuck in the plan. Because you're so methodical and detailed and structured, you love also checking things off. You could also be one of those people who put something on the list just to check it off because you love checking off things so much. And you might even have it also color-coded, prioritized already. You might be really organized with it, but literally the challenge is that you can get bogged down in over-preparing and over-planning. And that then delays action, or you don't take action at all, or only under big pressure because all of a sudden you're in a time crunch. And you also might struggle to be flexible enough to pivot if something unexpected pops up, or you find a flaw in your plan maybe. That's what can happen with you, right? So you have a tendency to create inflexible systems, rigid routines, and most of all, you trying to be perfect with everything. Perfect to create the perfect plan before you even start. Right now I'm reading this book, Buy Back Your Time, and in there it says 80% executed is 100% awesome. So don't plan to 100%. Plan for 80% and then start working on it and try to be flexible. So let's move on to the air type. I have a client who is really an air type, and their brain is like a fireworks show, right? Like brilliant ideas everywhere constantly. They tend to overestimate how much they can do in a day because their head in their head, everything seems quite quick and easy. So my client often says, oh, that's nothing, I can do that really quickly. And then 3-4 hours later, they are either still not done with it, or they haven't even started doing it because they came across seven other little things that they needed to do first. And then when you say to them, oh, I thought you're gonna go and work on this task, they say, well, this had to get done too, right? So they get really easily distracted. And so these idea explosions really create long to-do lists, and they're scattered to-do lists and things written down everywhere and anywhere, and then they can't find it anymore. And the lists are often also unrealistic. Like they overestimate completely what they can do in one day and put so much on their list and then never get past the first one, because everything sounds doable to them in theory, but they underestimate how long in practicality things actually really take. And then they get overwhelmed when they also jump from idea to idea. They sometimes forget to write things down. They often forget what they're working on and get sidetracked and then start working on something else and realize later that they should have actually worked on the first thing, not on the second. And their lists often stay really theoretical, like rather than getting implemented. They have these lists everywhere and then they implement something completely different. So this is how my client is. And it's their excuse, like I said, is always, well, that had to be done too. Well, yes, but then why even bother planning? But then they are really the ones that are also in need of planning and having a proper to-do list, and not just do the things during the day by the flight of their pants, how my ex-husband used to say. So the tendency is really mental overload, paper and digital clutter, half-finished digital tools like apps and planners and everything everywhere, Post-it notes and snippets of papers, things, I just put it here for now and then they never find it again. They never finish it. So that's air. That's air, and it's not easy, but they're brilliant people. If you're one of those, you're awesome. We just need to get your challenges a little bit under control, like not in a rigid way, but a little bit under control. Now let's look at the last type, the water type. So the water type, if you're a water type, you're guided by feelings and wanting to be in the flow. And you for sure don't like rigid lists and plans at all. Like you're the complete opposite of the earth type who loves lists and plans and checking things off. That's not your jam. And so you most likely don't even have any lists. You just want to flow through the day, right? And you want to feel right when you do the things and feel everything is aligned. And so if something starts to feel heavy or off, you get overwhelmed even more, and then you don't want to do things. So you are emotional and intuitive, which is very, very helpful. But then when you do write certain lists, you may stay very vague and more driven by how you feel than actually in a way that is practical. You may write, get my energy right, or get my motivation up, get my mojo done, or you might also work very vague, work on content strategy or work on content. But I mean, when you then sit down, you really don't know what to do. And yes, you do work best when you're inspired. But when you're inspired, it also helps that you know what exactly needs to be done so that you can do that. But if it's so vague, everything, and more driven by feelings, like get my feelings in a row or get my energy right, that it's not actionable, right? So you do struggle with structure and consistency, and you might avoid to-do lists altogether because you see them as too rigid. But you actually are also, just like the air type, you're really in need of some structure. And because when we keep the things too vague, everything can be emotionally very heavy and overwhelming, and then we avoid the tasks to begin with. Especially the ones that have strong feelings attached, things that maybe are not our favorite things to do. And then we push them out of the way, and then we get more overwhelmed and we get more stressed. And if we can bring some structure into it as water types, that helps a lot. And it doesn't have to be rigid, right? So maybe you recognized yourself in one of those 4 types. We're usually not just one type, right? So I'm not just fire. I also have a lot of air. And at times I am like a water type. And at times I can get lost in the earth type with the planning and everything. But in general, my dominant mode of operandi, like what I do, my operational mode in the morning is jumping just in, right, before actually really taking a minute and make sure I'm actually working on the right thing. So when we know our dominant element, when we know our personality type, now we can approach the tasks in a way that works for us. We can stop fighting against our challenges and tendencies that we have, and we can be creative and come up with an approach that works for us, that works with our strength, while at the same time it helps us deal with our challenges that we have. So as a fire type, I know I can't just jump in whatever excites me right now. Maybe I need to quickly address my to-do list and see whether there is anything urgent that I actually should jump in first before I can jump in whatever is exciting. So we can help ourselves and guide ourselves with more compassion rather than getting frustrated with ourselves and beating ourselves up or becoming completely overwhelmed and wanting to hide from the world. So now that I gave you a little bit of an overview like that, how each personality type addresses or approaches more the to-do list and the productivity that we need as business owners, next week I will talk about how I create smarter to-do lists, how I call it. I actually wrote a blog post about smarter to-do lists all the way back in 2018. And I pulled that one out and dusted it off and created now this podcast episode plus the next week's podcast episodes. And I walk you through how I think about creating from this huge catch-all master to-do list, how I create a smarter to-do list that works for me. And I will also talk about how, if your type is fire, earth, air, or water, how you can go from this catch-all master list that I really feel we all need. No matter what personality type you are, we need it all in one place. I will help you walk you through how to create this smarter to-do list for you and for your personality type. Okay, my friends, that's it for today. Make sure you tune back in next week for part 2, or when I talk about how I bring it all into this smarter to-do list. And maybe you know someone who also struggles with productivity, beats themselves up for not getting done what they actually wanted to get done. And maybe they discovered that they're one of these personality types and how they can actually get things done without beating themselves up, with more compassion. So point them to this episode, share this episode with them, and then bring them along for next week's episode, part 2, when we talk about how to create a smarter to-do list out of our catch-all list. Thanks for listening all the way to the end, and have a beautiful week. Talk to you next time, and let's create more peace in our lives, businesses, and to-do lists.